Welcome, Nikki. Nikki and Nikki are both here together. And Nikki just had her third baby boy 3 weeks ago. And I've known Nikki for some time now. When was that? I met you back in 2016, I want to say.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And you are an amazing yoga practitioner yourself. You are one of them. Your energy is just so calm. And so I was so excited when you said you were willing to share your birth story, because I know we have our second babies are the exact same age. So we were pregnant at the same time in 2020, and then you had a third. And so I would love you to share your story. And I preface this conversation by saying, like, we're here to hear all different kinds of stories. And, you now have had three, we'll call them unmedicated sort of home births. I don't know, call them home births because you were like in the jungle with one of them, right? Like you were living in Nicaragua or Costa Rica, you had your babies, right? Like the first two.
Yeah, Naya and Pax were born in Nicaragua. We call it the birth house, but we rented a house to have the births at because we were so far from a
Yeah.
hospital care if we needed to transfer. So
Yeah. Very good. So, I would love to hear, and I was actually, I'll be honest with you, when you signed up for the course, I was like, Nikki, you've had two really amazing, empowering, unmedicated, like we'll use the air quotes, natural birth experience. Says, and I'm like, and you still did the course. Like, what was that all about?
I really wanted to breathe my baby out, which I know like all different experiences and iterations of roaring and breathing babies out. Um, but I definitely like roar screamed both of my other two out. And in many ways, I felt like I didn't like harness the energy in the way that was most supportive to bringing baby down and out. And so I was interested in learning more about like the physical mechanics of
Mm-hmm.
happen so that it was a bit smoother. I think I joked a lot. Like I've heard you mention a few times with my first of like I was so set on having an orgasmic birth, which it was like the furthest thing from orgasmic, uh, like blissful after the fact. But I was really wanting to yeah to manifest a little bit like more peaceful and gentle of
Mm-hmm.
a birth. No, I loved my other two even through the intensity. I really wanted to breathe the baby out. It's like my big
Got
focus.
it. Got it. And how did it work out this time?
Great. I feel like so many of the things that I learned in the push to prep course, like I totally came back to throughout labor. So much so that I didn't even realize I was in transition
Oh my
or
gosh.
push when he came out. So specifically like the J breath was a big one that I continued to like return to. Just like that visualization
Mhm.
during each section, I found super helpful. Um, and then yeah, even during the pushing phase, I don't know if it's like because we created that muscle memory, mind memory when we were doing the course, but I feel like I was able to like bring all sound and energy down and actually activate my TVA in a way that did did make the pushing process much smoother. And my husband may say differently, but I don't think I really screamed. Like I think I was pretty quiet.
Yeah.
And even after his head came out and I was waiting for his body, or I think it was as his head was coming out, even using like some of the faster breaths to like ease the intensity
Yeah.
and kind of down. Um, yeah, they were super helpful. It was very smooth.
I'm very
So
happy for you. That's amazing. So with, you know, your third baby now, I guess, what would you say to anyone who is listening to this, who is hoping to have a similar experience? So maybe they're hoping to have a more undisturbed birth, have a birth that, they don't have any medication. Like, I hate to say the word natural because it's such a loaded term, but we'll call it an unmedicated birth. What would you say to somebody listening to this? Because you've had three, like, give us your advice.
Um, I mean, I think a few things that helped me with all of them was that, first of all, contractions, like they are like waves. I know we use that terminology often, but they will peak and they do subside. And so no matter how intense they get, like they will subside, which
Mhm.
mentally always helped me get through that. I also like always return to certain mantras before labor and even during that, like they're only as strong and as tense, and I don't really even like to use the word painful, but painful as I can handle and that I am. And other things too, like every sensation is just bringing baby closer to me.
Mhm.
I think especially after having gone through the first and then the second, it's just like the pure bliss and like ecstasy that I personally felt after having an unmedicated birth was just so worth all the long labor and intensity of the delivery. Um, yeah, and I guess just trusting your body. Like obviously anything can happen, and there are um, what's the word I'm looking for? There are I'm like already having mommy brain, but like exceptions to the situation, but for the most part, if we look at nature, like we watched a lot of animal births during my third pregnancy because my son and daughter wanted to attend the birth, and
Oh,
so we watched
cool.
animal births to just kind of get them comfortable with the
Yeah.
process of birth. And so after watching like hours of animal footage of birthing animals, uh, I just really remembered that like for the most part, if we're not disrupting the process, birth works. I say there's exceptions and things happen, but
Mhm.
mostly in nature, right?
Mhm.
It works. Um, and so just trusting that too. And I say that with also the fact that I've had really healthy pregnancies and low risk and all all was well. So
Yeah,
um,
there's definitely that element of so many factors, right? Like there's a luck component for sure, but there's also that mindset and that headspace thing as well. So it's multifactorial, that's for sure. Oh, you're holding little one right now. He's so big yawn. I love it. I love your multitasking. This is the sign of a veteran mom right here. You're like not unfazed, getting an interview, breastfeeding, holding a 3-week old. You're like, yeah, I love it. Um, so will you share with us how each of your births have differed? Because I'm curious to know, like, if the first one, typically we know your first your labor tends to be longer, right? Like, that's just sort of what happens. But are you able to kind of recap that for us?
Sure, yeah. Um, they were actually all fairly similar as far as like the progression of labor. I tend to be a long laborer, um, but my contractions always start fairly similar, where they're pretty regular and consistent right away. So for all three of them, I started with like 30-second to minute long contractions, like 5 to 7 minutes apart, but mild and gentle. With my first, we had a midwife staying with us in the home. And so when we told her that evening, she was like, "Great, baby should be here by the morning." And because we were in Central America and the house that we were in didn't have hot water, my husband went straight into putting on a pot of coffee and starting the boiling pots of water to bring up the stairs and get it all ready. And then she wasn't actually born until like 26 or 27 hours later.
Wow.
So it was quite a long game because I had this idea in my mind that it
Yeah,
was going to.
sure.
And then with her, I pushed for 3 hours. So the pushing phase was long, and at that point, after 26 hours, like I was
You're
totally
exhausted.
exhausted.
Yeah.
Like at one point, my midwife was even just, I was in the tub and like kind of falling asleep, and she was just like, cut the peaceful yogi stuff out. Like,
Yeah.
get out of the tub and let's make this happen,
Yeah.
or go to sleep and we'll try tomorrow. Or you can go to the hospital, they'll give you some Pitocin and it'll make things happen faster. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of the tub and make this happen. But it still took a while.
Mhm.
Which, talking to my birth attendant this time, she was kind of like, yeah, that sounds perfectly normal for a first birth.
Mhm.
And then my second, very similar, like contraction started the day prior. Um, I think the morning prior, and he was born like the next evening. So another like 24-ish hours of early labor and active labor combined.
Mhm.
Uh, I birthed him in the water, and he definitely came up much faster, like just a few pushes. But again, I remember just like the transition, like
Mhm.
I have visceral memory, maybe because I watched the birth video a couple times. So just like hearing myself go through it is like,
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, it's like animalistic, right?
yeah. So I remember even this time around being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to like get another head out of out. What I remembered to be just
Yeah.
so intense. But then the rest of his body, it almost had like a little bit of like a fetal ejection reflex where like once his head was out, which took a lot of energy and time, the rest of him kind of came out pretty quickly. So I think that pushing phase was much faster. But this time around, like I think my biggest, I wouldn't call it a fear, but like my biggest worry, hesitation, nervousness around birth was the crowning and transition and just like getting their their head out. Where this time because it was completely undisturbed, so I didn't have any cervical checks or anything. And so I had no idea how far along I was. And part of that was I really wanted to be able to feel where I was and like hope to feel the baby coming down through the canal. Um, and I just remember like at one point I was actually in the tub and I was feeling like I needed to push, but in my mind, labor had started the day before, but it was only like 11:30, 12 o'clock or something like that. And things started getting pretty intense. But in my mind, I thought, well, the other ones didn't come to the
Mhm.
next night. So I still have, I just thought I had like 7 or 8 more hours to go. I just assumed it was going to go the same way that the other two did. But he was actually born at 1:26 in the afternoon, and I had started labor the morning prior, so much faster. Um,
So 12 hours or so or less?
I woke up the day before with contractions, but they were really mild all day. And then I went to bed Monday night and I was like, okay, like hopefully I don't want to get woken up through the night and like have this all happen in the middle of the night. So hopefully I can go to sleep and get some rest and things will pick up again tomorrow. And then throughout the night, I was definitely waking up with strong
Mhm.
enough contractions that I had to kind of like moan and breathe
Mhm.
through. And then by morning, I think I was probably in active labor, but didn't fully think I was.
Mhm.
And so I called my birth attendant and she was like, okay, like I'll clear the day. Baby should, we'll probably be here by the evening. But then by 10 o'clock, I said to my husband, like, I think you should time these. Like they feel really close together. Like this feels really strong. And he's like, yeah, they're like 2 minutes apart. And I was like, okay, like maybe record me going through a contraction and then send it to her because they can
Uh,
typically tell like by sound,
yeah, yeah.
where a woman is at. And she called right away and she's like, I'm coming. And she got 11:30 and he was born at
Oh,
1:30. So
like 2 hours. She was only with you for 2 hours. Wow.
wow. And she was so just chill and calm and relaxed and at ease about the whole thing. And I don't know, it might have just been her personality or maybe because she knew I was nervous about the transition. But at one point I was like, I think I'm closer than I realize.
Mm.
I kind of feel like I want to push. And she's just like, great. Like your body's doing really good work. And I was like, okay. She's like, And I'm
Why am
like
I
trying
laughing?
to envision this. Oh yeah, every time I tell people, they think it's so funny, but it was kind of looking back on it. And she's just like, can you just surrender to that pressure and that you're feeling? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she left.
She
And
would
then
mean she left? What do you
well, she
mean?
like left the room. She gave me a
Okay.
minute after a few minutes. Like she was just making small talk too, like asking about my tattoo and just like, and I'm like fully getting ready to crown. And so then my husband came in and he's like, "Are you pushing?" I was like, "I
Sorry.
don't know, but like I kind of feel like I need to." And he's like, "Okay."
Are you in the tub right now? Like what's happening?
The tub, yeah, because
Yeah.
I had really strong contractions shortly before that I was like, "Okay, I need to get in the tub and like chill
Mhm.
this out." And I was like, and then at that point, I was like, I need to poop. I need to poop. And I was like, I don't want to poop in the tub. I'm gonna get out. So I get out, and my husband's like, okay, I'll give you a minute. And then he walked out, and the birth attendant's like, she doesn't need to poop. Like the baby is
Yeah.
coming. But I
Yeah.
had no, and I got on the toilet, and I was like, oh my god, the baby's crowning.
So you started crowning on the toilet.
Yeah, and then I really quickly was like, I don't want to birth on the toilet. So they all came back in, and they're like, okay, where do you want to be? And I was just like, I don't know. I did not know this was about to happen. And so then I just like kneeled onto the ground, and
And like,
next
yeah.
his head came out, and he actually came out in sac. He was in Caul.
So
Uh,
awesome.
so I don't know if it was like less intense to birth them in Caul. Like it came out like in full
Yeah.
sac.
So you
Uh,
had to your birth attendant had to break the sac for him to come out, right? Like once baby was born, or
oh
did it just
yeah, his leg. I think it all happened so fast. We thought we got
okay?
it on video, but we didn't. It was like hard to catch because I was like, it
Oh
was like in
yeah, slippery.
sac. And so I think once his whole body came out, like his leg kind of bursted open, and
Okay.
it burst open on its own.
So you're on the bathroom floor after having started crowning on the toilet because you thought you had to poop, and then you just like throw yourself onto hands and knees and push your baby out on the bathroom floor, just so I can be like a clear visual
Yeah,
here.
head first, yeah, and then a little bit of those like, okay, it's actually happening breaths, and then yeah, then I had a little bit of a break once his head came out, and my husband like ran to get a straw because I needed water and couldn't like drink without my my straw in the cup, and
Yeah.
took a couple sips of water, and then the next contraction he was out.
Were the kids there watching?
They ended up not being here. No, they had co-op. They're in a program 2 days a week because we
Okay.
homeschool, and they were putting on a play that day.
Oh,
And so it was this whole like, do they go? Do they not? And we decided to let them go because I thought I'd be laboring all
right.
day.
Yeah.
And like having two littles, I loved the idea of them being there. But that morning, as I was going through some contractions, my son was like climbing all over me, like, "Are you
Mhm.
a baby right now?" Like bouncing the birth ball all over the place. And in retrospect, I feel like it was probably better that way because it allowed me to be
Oh my God, yeah.
distracted.
With I have a 3-year-old boy also. I can completely understand why you're like, go to your play. I need to concentrate.
Yeah, they to miss it. We saved that. We burned the cord. We did a little burning of the cord ceremony, so we saved that for when they came home, which was
Oh, I
just
love that. I love that. Oh. So I'm going to finish off by asking you one question that we always ask.
okay.
And that is, if you could say anything to your pregnant self, what would it be?
I feel like I did tell myself this the whole pregnancy, but the first thing that comes up is just to trust your body, trust your baby, trust the process, and that all will be well.
Thank you for that, Nikki.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing all of the details and just offering a perspective that is really important.